They see their nuclear arsenals as something, as a source of national pride. And so it means that the language around them and the threats surrounding their nuclear arsenals can get very, very hot at times of tension.
After terrorists killed 26 tourists in Indian-administered Kashmir, people in Pakistan and around the world expected reprisals. They came overnight. This is how people heard some of them in Pakistan. India says it's justice served for the terrorist attack in Kashmir, which killed those 26 tourists. We heard from someone in Islamabad early on saying that the sky turned red overnight when those bombs started to fall. The Indian Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri gave a statement saying that Pakistan hasn't done enough since that attack.
Despite a fortnight having passed since the attacks, there has been no demonstrable step from Pakistan to take action against the terrorist infrastructure on its territory or on territory under its control. Instead, all it has indulged in are denials and allegations. Our intelligence monitoring of Pakistan-based terrorist modules indicated that further attacks against India were impending.
Yeah, so there's an element of self-defence and all of that you're just hearing there. Further attacks could have been impending. As we will assess the risk of nuclear escalation in a moment, but let's talk to the Times World Affairs editor, Catherine Philp. Catherine, morning to you.
Good morning, Stig.
We heard from Pakistan this is the deepest incursion by India into Pakistan, the deepest strike in 50 years. How big a moment is this in your view?
It's a pretty big moment. The last conflict of this kind happened in 2019, and those strikes that India took against Pakistan in revenge for an ambush on Indian soldiers, those were referred to and still are as surgical strikes, and they were much more limited. So the breadth of these strikes is something different and something concerning, and is a level of escalation. The other thing that's happened in the interim since 6 years ago is that the status of Kashmir was very controversially changed. It had a degree of autonomy that was stripped away by Delhi, and the territory was flooded with Indian troops. Internet was restricted. There were mass arrests of Kashmiri politicians, and all of this was supposed to impose a kind of calm across Kashmir that had eluded it over the decades. And I think that this latest, the attack from Pakistan, the terror attack on civilian tourists there, has sort of shattered what Modi had claimed to have done 6 years ago when he made those moves.
I'm very struck also that in most conflicts, the country will say, "Oh, we've only struck military targets," and yet India have gone out of their way to say we've struck no military targets. They're trying to say this is nothing to do with the state of Pakistan. This is to do with terrorists living within Pakistan. But the flip side of that is that means civilians are probably caught up in it more.
Yeah, I mean, India's contention has always been that the Pakistani state does back these terror groups, and whether they go sort of a toggle between saying that they give support to them or that they merely tolerate their presence, that they do see the Pakistani state as hand in glove with these terror groups.
What happens now? Because we've heard Indian planes shot down, we've heard artillery fired from Pakistan into India. There's potentially, pilots taken prisoner. That happened before. That could happen again with these planes coming down. What would you expect? Is it all eyes on Islamabad? Is it what they do next is the critical question?
Yeah, I think that's the first question in any case, is exactly how do they retaliate? And I think they will. And I think, some of the rhetoric we've heard coming out of there suggests they will too. Back in 2019, there was enough movement in the nuclear arsenals of both countries detected from elsewhere to, I think they got the Secretary of State in Washington up in the middle of the night. Such was the anxiety
Mike Pompeo, wasn't it? He said that he actually talked Pakistan down from some degree of nuclear intervention, or at least the threat of nuclear intervention.
He did, yes. Now, I had the somewhat unpleasant experience of living in Delhi through a nuclear crisis, two of which we had in 2002. And when twice it looked like India and Pakistan might actually be prepared to lob nuclear weapons at each other. And it was incredibly tense. I mean, most of the embassies sent their non-essential staff back. We were having extraordinary conversations about where you would go if there was a nuclear exchange. The Indian foreign minister of the time, who was from the same party as Narendra Modi now, he said that if Pakistan hit India, they could lose 20 million people, but that didn't matter because they had nearly 1 billion even then. I mean, some of the rhetoric that you get between these two countries, it can be absolutely terrifying. And then it may go away and they say, well, what were you fussing about? We were just talking about it. But something that I remember very vividly from that time was that there was no culture in either country of, I think, the way that we grew up watching terrifying movies about mutually assured destruction and nuclear winters and stuff. That simply never happened in India and Pakistan, and they see their nuclear arsenals as something, as a source of national pride. And so it means that the language around them and the threats surrounding their nuclear arsenals can get very, very hot at times of tension.
Yeah, and so we'll see whether that language comes out as the morning and the days and the weeks progress. Catherine, as ever, great to speak to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
That's Catherine Philp there, the Times World Affairs editor. Interesting that she was in Delhi in 2002. We have been here before. This is a period, I mean, this is a problem since 1947 when Kashmir was created in India. Not created, but when India and Pakistan, there was a partition and Kashmir was given the opportunity to choose between those two countries. And ever since then, there has been conflict in the region. Let's talk about that question, though, that Catherine was just raising of the two countries' nuclear arsenal with Hamish de Bretton Gordon, former commanding officer of the UK's Joint Chemical, Biological, Radiological and Nuclear Regiment. Hamish, good morning to you.
Yeah, hi, good morning.
This interesting out from Catherine, the culture around nuclear. I mean, just in the last few years, we've talked about Russia's nuclear capacity and how that impacts the conflict on the ground. We're going to be having the same conversation, or at least another conversation now about India and Pakistan.
Well, absolutely. I think you've covered a lot of good details so far, and looking back at the 2019 conflict between India and Pakistan, which didn't escalate and didn't go nuclear. It might be strange for your listeners here, but I think axiomatically, both Pakistan and India having nuclear weapons makes a wider conventional and nuclear conflict probably less likely. Yeah. I absolutely get the point that was said earlier on about the sort of perception in India and Pakistan about nuclear weapons is rather different than it is here in the West, but still those people who control them and those people who have developed them know exactly how powerful they are. And there is parity, there is equilibrium between Pakistan and India's nuclear weapons. You only have to look to Ukraine. Now, when Ukraine lost its nuclear weapons in 1996, that is when Putin really started planning his operations, because he felt that he could invade Ukraine without the fear of nuclear weapons to stop him. And 3 years down the line, he's probably thinking it was still a good decision. So hopefully this conflict will develop like the others have. And as you said, India and Pakistan have been fighting in Kashmir since partition in 1947. So, and I think some of the language coming out of Pakistan today saying they will retaliate at a time and place of their choosing seems to me this is more sort of tit for tat than escalating into a wider conflict.
I think that's a very important point. Just finally, I mean, it feels like we live in a very unsafe world. Maybe the world is always like this. There's always examples, as you know, there's been examples between India and Pakistan in 2019, in 2002. There's been conflict with the Ukraine in 2014. The Middle East has been constantly in conflict for the last almost 100 years. And yet, does it feel to you we're getting a sort of concatenation, a gathering of these crises all at once?
Well, I think you're right. There is an awful lot happening at the moment. And perhaps on the eve of VE Day 80, we're potentially closer to sort of a global conflict than ever before. And I think it reinforces, and hopefully it reinforces, that actually, you cannot appease dictators like Putin. You cannot appease people like the Iranians. You've got to show strength. It's when you don't show strength that people exploit it and exploit weakness and then develop. And, again, it is a bit of a 1939 moment. We need to be more like Churchill than Chamberlain. And I can see that people are really concerned at the moment. And let's just hope our leaders have got the resolve to be strong in the face of these threats, because I think that is most likely to keep the peace. And I still, having been in the nuclear defense world most of my life, as long as there is equilibrium and parity in the nuclear sphere, then we can maintain, although a slightly uneasy and difficult peace. It's lasted for 80 years, and hopefully it will last for at least another 80 years.
It's an excellent point, and maybe a key one when we consider the issue between India and Pakistan, as you say. Hamish, good to speak to you. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
That's Hamish de Bretton Gordon, their former commanding officer of the UK's Joint Chemical, Biological, Radiological and Nuclear Regiment.